What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the XFL Week in Review, one of the longest-running XFL podcasts. I'm your host, Mark Perry, here to bring you the latest and greatest from the XFL, USFL, UFL world. This is episode 216, and we're here just 100 days away from XFL, USFL, or UFL kickoff, and the excitement is truly ramping up. On this week's episode, we're diving deep into the anticipated merger. We've got some insight, including details about player allocation plans, a tentative draft date that could potentially reshape everything that's going on. We're also looking at how there's been a leak, basically, of the USFL teams like Michigan, Houston, Memphis, and Birmingham would be part of the league, but don't hold. What Houston team are we talking about? We're talking about the Houston Roughnecks, the Houston Gamblers. That is in flux as well, plus some player movement. And we've got, of course, so much more, plus your emails as well. Remember, if you want to be part of the show, email podcast at XFL News Hub with your thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, folks, plus I got some cool things from the USFL, some USFL cards that came in the mail. So I want to talk about that at the end of the show as well. So without further ado, folks, let's just dive right on into it.
Welcome to the XFL Week in Review with your host, Mark Perry.
So Pro Football Talk reported that the USFL Players Association had informed its members of a significant development, that 4 USFL teams are set to continue in this merged league for the 2024 season. Those teams are the Michigan Panthers, the Houston Gamblers, Memphis Showboats, and Birmingham Stallions. This was big news, something that we've kind of figured was going on there. So lots of questions surround the Houston Gamblers. Is it the Houston Gamblers players? Is it the coaches? Or is it the Houston Roughnecks? Like, what's going on with all of that stuff? What's going on with season tickets, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the 4 teams from the USFL. The XFL rumored side, of course, is Arlington, DC, San Antonio Brahmas, and St. Louis Battlehawks. The question is, Roughnecks or Gamblers? And that seems to be something that is out there. We have season tickets being purchased right now for the Houston Roughnecks. Why would you then switch it to the Houston Gamblers? That's something. Also, dealing with this situation is the stadium. Where are they going to actually play? TD-ECU Stadium is undergoing renovation, and there's no alternative that we have heard of that they have picked yet. And then, of course, we had all these player movements with Roughneck players leaving. We've been told that maybe the Seattle Sea Dragons players were also advised to seek new teams. So clear sign of things shifting. Our own main man, Mike Mitchell, also posted out that the latest word is that the Houston team brand for merged league hasn't been finalized yet. So what does that mean? That means that potentially the Houston Roughnecks name stays, but the players and staff, the players who are connected to the union staying in Houston, that would kind of explain all of the Roughneck players looking for new teams, but not the Gamblers players. So that is something that is still being discussed right now. Scooby Wright basically leaked all the texts that all the players had gotten, which talked about the surviving team. So he corroborated all that. But there's still no official announcement yet. But what we can tell you right now is that in flux, it could be, there is a Houston team. The question is it the Gamblers and the Roughnecks? But it's seeming to be that the Houston Gamblers players are the ones that will take over that franchise, and then the Roughneck players are clearly looking for a new situation. Because remember, the Gamblers never played a single down in since the 80s in Houston, but the Roughnecks have. They've played 2 seasons, a half a season and a full season. So does Wade Phillips and AJ Smith stay on as the Houston Roughnecks coaches, but they have to take on the Houston Gamblers players because they're the ones that are part of that union? That's something that we're going to have to wait and see and find out. Let us know what you think in the comments. Who should stay, Houston Roughnecks or Houston Gamblers? Let us know in the comments. So our main man, Scooby Wright, which I just want to point out that I have his NFT from the USFL. Just want to point out I have a Scooby Wright NFT from his days at the USFL, dropped some interesting things on the Twitters about the message that the players got from the United States USFL PA. So, of course, we all know 8 teams are in the merge. Stallions, Houston Gamblers / Roughnecks, that is questionable. Memphis Showboats, Panthers, Renegades, DC Defenders, San Antonio Brahmas, and Battlehawks are the rumored XFL side, clearly because they are selling tickets. However, there is other teams that are selling tickets too. What we learned was that the player allocation strategy, the merge introduced a 3-phase allocation process, including projections and a dispersal draft. And of course, also that the merge league will be adopting the XFL's hub style. Basically, everything will be out of Arlington, Texas. So we know what Pro Football Talk had said. They were the ones that first talked about the USFL PA announcement. Now we've gotten details about this draft and what's going to take place. So let's break it down for you. And thanks to Scooby Wright for letting this all out. So there's a 3-phase player allocation. The transition, of course, this is getting from 16 teams to 8, involves 3 phases. The first, player allocation phase 1, each remaining USFL team will identify up to 42 protected USFL contracted players on their roster. These players will be notified of their status. Phase 2, teams then claim up to 20 additional protected players from non-surviving USFL teams. Procedures may be in place for handling multiple claims for same players. So they can protect their 42 of their own USFL contracted players from their roster. Then they can grab 20 players from other rosters in the USFL. That gives us 62 players on the roster. Phase 3, a dispersal draft will include USFL players not protected in the other 2 phases. Non-contracted players who have previously participated in the USFL or other leagues joining in 2024 must sign with the league before the draft. So that would be XFL players that don't have teams, and also I would assume the XFL is doing the same thing. And this would also include the NFL players that are no longer under contract. Some other tidbits that we learned was that in his texts was that the Memphis Showboats are finalizing their coaching staff after Todd Haley's departure. They have identified, could it be a USFL guy? Could it be an XFL guy? We'll have to stay tuned for that. The new league will also use, of course, he said, with the XFL style. So everything will be out in Arlington, Texas as well. So the upcoming dispersal draft is rumored to be in mid-January. That's what the message said. We assume it will follows the XFL's June announcement of teams expanding their rosters to 90 players before they went into camp. Remember, we're already at 100 days. Now, the player pool will also include NFL players, and their season ends January 7th. So whatever draft is going to take place, it would be after January 7th, because then the NFL players, it gives them a chance, so that week after the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, somewhere around there seems legit. Also expecting some kind of major announcement December 21st, which is today, hearing that there is nothing out there right now of any kind of major announcements. So we're just going to have to kind of wait and see. So there you have it. This is how it's going to kind of work with the players and where they're going to go, their player allocation plans, details. Understand that the XFL side of things, maybe from the USFL PA put out a little too much information, and some of this stuff might not even be finalized yet. So this is all tentative information, tentative draft. You get the picture. You've been around. If you've been following the channel, we're at 216 episodes. So from the beginning, things are always, it's been in discussion, rumors. When we actually have anything, we will, of course, let you know. Let us know what you think about this in the comments. The Battlehawks have claimed Max Borghi, which I think is huge. So while the Houston Roughnecks thing is in limbo, which we're thinking that the Houston Gamblers will take over, maybe potentially either they'll be called the Houston Gamblers or they'll be called the Houston Roughnecks with Houston Gamblers players. But the Houston Roughnecks players are now free to move about the cabin. And one of the main man guys, Max Borghi, has landed with the Battlehawks. So that announcement came on December 18th. The Washington State alum now joins his 4th professional team since coming out of school in 2020. This is huge. Borghi was a dynamic running back in college and the XFL, despite only playing in 8 games, 6 touchdowns, 572 all-purpose yards with the Houston Roughnecks. Many have garnered him as the Christian McCaffrey guy. I'm a huge fan of Max Borghi. So him landing with the Battlehawks really kind of makes that was one of their weaknesses. Maybe they weren't super strength at that. But I mean, if Borghi comes back, they get their wide receivers back, and then AJ McCarron comes back. Watch out for the St. Louis Battlehawks. But you can see that we'll probably get more of these things as players are shifting to different teams. So stay tuned to XFL News Hub for all the latest news. But this, to me, is the biggest off-season, aside from the merger. To me, this is a huge off-season move by the Battlehawks. Are you a fan of the XFL, USFL, and CFL football? Get ready to embrace your inner general manager with NewsHubFantasy.com's fantasy football experience. NewsHubFantasy.com offers you an unparalleled fantasy football platform bringing together fans of the XFL, USFL, and CFL football leagues. Compete in season-long fantasy with leagues up to 6 players. You can create your own for friends, or you can join an existing league. Draft your ideal team with our 7 active roster spots, including a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, flex, tight end, kicker, plus 3 bench spots. Show off your football knowledge and strategy and dominate your league. Our user-friendly interface makes it easy to manage with your team and get the latest news in your XFL or USFL or CFL leagues on the go. Plus, News Hub Fantasy offers mock drafts, pick'em games, and so much more all season long. So don't miss out on the action. Sign up now at newshubfantasy.com and become the ultimate football fantasy manager. All right, we are back. They had some interesting news about Ben DiNucci. There was talked about whether the Saints were looking to pick him up after with Derek Carr's issue. Ben DiNucci was could have signed with the Saints, but he chose to stay with Denver instead. Of course, DiNucci led the league with 2,671 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. We would not know if he has a team, but that was kind of just an interesting story about what's going on with Ben DiNucci, but he stays in Denver. And we have breaking news, my friends. All right, this is from Jeff Badette, and he had posted this message that he got. I assume this is from the XFL. So here we go. The new league may be created by the beginning of January 2024. May. Given this, I would highly recommend that all doctor's appointments be booked as soon as possible by the end of the year to ensure you are covered if you have medical paid for by the XFL. There will be 2 conferences in the new league. XFL would be Arlington, DC, San Antonio, and St. Louis. USFL would be Birmingham, Houston, Memphis, and Michigan. This would make sense to just stick with the Gamblers name because you can't have the Houston Roughnecks in the USFL division. So that should answer that question. The hub for all 8 teams will be Arlington, Texas, though home games will be played in the team's market with the same travel arrangements as last season. The report date for training camp is currently scheduled for February 23rd. So February 23rd is that. Currently, the plan is for all players to be housed in a player hotel for training camp and be granted a $400 a week stipend for housing for the season. Game day pay for all players will be the same. There'll be 10 games with no bye weeks. Currently, it is reported that inactives will receive $2,500 per game. Inactives will receive $5,350 per game. Draft information. Players on a dissolved XFL team will not be able to be released to sign with a USFL team. The process, as reported, is as follows. Prior to the 27th, the XFL teams in the XFL conference will protect 42 players only on their roster. They will release the remaining players on the roster, and these players will be considered unprotected. Then on the 27th, a mini dispersal draft. The 4 teams in the XFL conferences will be able to select 10 players max to add to their roster. There's that. From dissolved XFL teams only. The 4 teams in the USFL conference will be able to select 10 players max from the roster of the dissolved USFL teams only. In other words, there will be roughly more than 260 players for the XFL teams to choose 40 players total to add to their roster on the 27th. After this date, there will be 220 players remaining that will be rolled into a super dispersal draft. On January 15th, the super dispersal draft, both the XFL and USFL will have a dispersal draft consisting of players from both the XFL and USFL, dissolved teams, and players who were released by the XFL and USFL prior teams of 27th, the unprotected players. On this date, the USFL teams will draft 23 players to compete in the training camp roster. So on this date, the USFL and XFL teams will draft 23 players to complete the training. That's 23 players per team. You do not need to do anything to be considered. And there you have it. So thanks to Jeff Badet, we have some information about the draft, dispersal draft on the 15th. This mini dispersal that's going to take place on the 27th, so we're after Christmas. Pay is going to be the same. It looks like, my friends, we're going to have a new name because you have the two conferences, the XFL conference and USFL conference. So maybe the United Football League is a thing. Interesting. And then, of course, training camp is currently scheduled for February 23rd, 2024. The new league may be created by the beginning of 2024. Maybe. So that is something to keep in mind too, clearly, because it's bolded that they may have this going by January of 2024. Or maybe do they just play out their seasons together or not together? Like, who knows? There was like some rumblings out there that maybe they would have one league, but then let the two leagues play out. But clearly that doesn't seem to be the case. The two conferences, XFL, like, just call yourself whatever. I don't know. I'm not a fan of changing the name. Like, why reinvent the wheel? And then also, but then you're keeping the XFL and USFL. Like, just merge it all together and be done with it. Like, I don't understand it. But that's why I'm not there, and I'm here with you guys. So reaction to what you think this is. So a couple dates, February 23rd, training camp begins in Arlington, Texas. They'll keep the hub. And then, of course, we have all these kind of dispersal drafts as we kind of make. Now, there's no mention about NFL players and what their deal is as well. So there you have it. Breaking news from your pal Mark on XFL News Hub. Thanks to Jeff Badet for letting us know that as well. We do have some emails real quick asking about tryout dates. There is no tryout dates for this league. You're going to have to wait till the summertime for that. And as far as the new league names, this is if they go with the USFL, keep XFL and USFL for the conference names. Well, yeah, you got it. You got it, Zach. That's what you wanted, a new name with the two conferences. But what happens when you add another team? I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't matter what they choose as long as the market is well. XFL, USFL both have some brand recognition, but also brand baggage that is hard to let go for some people. And this is true as well. So you've got it. You got two conferences. And then you have, the USFL. There we go. So that's the latest news. If you got more, stay tuned to XFL News Hub. This is breaking. Like, this just came out like 20 minutes ago as we were kind of wrapping up the recording. As always, let us know what you think in the comments about this draft and this potential structure. And then the new league may be created at the beginning of January 2024. So there's a whole lot of maybes. We'll see what happens as this all plays out, but it should be a really interesting next couple of weeks, as soon as we get past Christmas. And by the way, this is the final episode before Christmas. We'll have probably something next week as well, following all this information. But again, Merry Christmas to all you guys out there. As always, God bless. Soak it in. We'll see what happens. And I will see you all. Make sure you like and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Merry Christmas.